The airlock hissed open with a sigh that could have been mistaken for annoyance if one had time to anthropomorphize machinery. Captain Elias Arden stepped inside the embassy corridor, his boots clanging against the metallic floor like a percussion section with a vendetta. He glanced at the sleek panels along the walls, glowing faintly with projected star maps and diplomatic alerts, and muttered under his breath, "I swear, whoever designed this place had too much free time and not enough sense of danger." Somewhere down the hall, a holographic chandelier flickered, casting fractured rainbows across polished surfaces, and Elias caught sight of his own reflection. He looked tired, underfed, and generally like someone who had been sent on missions where routine security meant probably get vaporized by a plasma rifle today. "Captain Arden," a voice intoned, crisp and lilting like polished crystal being tapped in perfect rhythm. He spun around, nearly tripping over the low grav strip at the doorway. There she was, Queen Lysara, standing with an elegance that made him feel like a hurriedly drawn stick figure. She looked human, almost annoyingly so, except for the ears that extended gracefully from the sides of her head, tapering to points that quivered with subtle, deliberate gestures. They twitched when she was curious, flattened when she was amused, and occasionally, he'd later learn, they vibrated like antennas when she was irritated. Right now, they flicked in a rhythm that said amusement. He guessed she was assessing him. Or judging him, maybe both. "Captain," she said again, this time adding a tilt of her head that was entirely regal, yet oddly playful. "I hear you are the human who believes caffeine is mandatory for survival." Her tone held no accusation, only a sharp, teasing precision. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Mandatory? Hardly," he said, trying to sound authoritative while simultaneously calculating if an energy pack in his pocket might explode. "Preferable, yes. Essential, only if one plans to remain conscious for more than 15 minutes in this embassy." He offered her a grin that had seen better days. She stared at him with those violet eyes that seemed to shimmer faintly, like light trapped in amethyst crystals, and for a moment he was certain she could see the insides of his coffee-stained soul. Lysara's lips curved into something resembling a smile or a warning. 15 minutes. Bold. I will note this for future reference, Captain. Do you always speak so, frankly, to alien royalty, or is this reserved for those with questionable taste in beverage? Elias scratched the back of his neck, trying to hide the faint smirk creeping onto his face. "Only when the royalty threatens to make me do complicated paperwork instead of actual soldiering. I have a personal code against intergalactic bureaucracy. It's in my manual, page 72, very official." A small, low chuckle escaped her, a sound that seemed alien and familiar all at once, vibrating through the quiet corridor. Elias felt a minor tremor of victory. She laughed. She had a sense of humor. That could be useful or dangerous, depending on how lethal it turned out to be. "Very well," Lysara said, turning her long ears toward the corridor ahead. "Walk with me. I must show you the perimeters of our delicate hospitality arrangements. You will want to see where your vigilance might prevent minor disasters." She gestured, and the hallway seemed to shift subtly, as if the embassy itself were aware of her presence and bent slightly to accommodate her passage. Elias followed, boots clattering, trying not to look like a novice, while in his mind he catalogued every possible escape route, every reflective surface, and every suspicious shadow. They passed through a room filled with anti-gravity gardens where bioluminescent plants floated lazily in midair, roots dangling like the tendrils of some cosmic jellyfish. Elias tilted his head at one of the luminous flora. "Are those edible?" he asked, mostly to fill the silence and partly because curiosity was part of his job description. "Depends on your species, tolerance for mild neurotoxicity, and a psychedelic experience lasting approximately 12 hours, Lysara replied, ears flicking. She sounded amused. "Do you wish to try?" Elias waved a hand vaguely. "Tempting, but I prefer to stay conscious enough to prevent any assassinations or diplomatic faux pas. mostly the assassinations. Wise, she said, though your humor may serve as both weapon and shield. I am curious if your species always masks nervousness with wit, or if this is a particularly charming specimen of human fortitude. He smirked despite himself. Fortitude, definitely charming. I'll let future historians decide. He glanced at her ears again, fascinated by their subtle motions, their almost hypnotic rhythm. He wondered if they were sensory or purely expressive. Maybe both. Either way, it was unsettling. Not dangerous, yet, but unsettling enough to make a soldier like him stay alert. As they reached a set of transparent walls overlooking the embassy's docking bay, Elias caught movement. A shimmer, like light bending where it shouldn't, just past the edge of the human patrols. He squinted. "You seeing that?" he asked, voice lowered. Lysara tilted her head, ears flicking toward the anomaly. Ah, an unwelcome guest, possibly a courier of unpleasant surprises, or someone who has overestimated their ability to remain unseen. I was beginning to hope today would be mundane, Captain. He sighed, running a hand down his face. Mundane is not in my job description, ma'am. I deal in high-stakes mayhem and questionable decisions that somehow work out by the skin of my teeth. Routine is for people who work at desk jobs and complain about recycled air. She laughed again, this time louder, the sound resonating faintly through the docking bay, and he realized that despite the danger, the sound was oddly comforting. I see. Then we are perfectly matched, Captain. You handle the chaos, I handle, well, everything else, and together we may yet survive my court's penchant for intrigue. Just then a distant alert blared, piercing and insistent. Elia's heart rate kicked up. The human in him recognized danger, while another part, the part that always thrived on absurdity and sarcasm, smiled grimly. "Well," he said, drawing his sidearm, "looks like someone decided to skip the coffee and jump straight to the excitement portion of the day. Shall we?" Lysara's ears twitched in agreement, her violet eyes narrowing with focus. "Shall we indeed, Captain? And do try to keep your wits about you, though I suspect your humor may already be doing that for you in some questionable fashion." Elias grinned, one hand steady on his weapon, the other brushing against the shimmering wall of force fields as they moved. The embassy, with its floating gardens, its strange lights, and its royalty with ears that could read the faintest tremor of thought, suddenly felt less like a palace and more like a battleground disguised as an elegant, if slightly absurd, stage. And somewhere deep inside, he realized that surviving this day might require every ounce of skill, every flash of wit, and perhaps a willingness to trust a queen whose laughter could make a soldier forget the gravity of the dangers surrounding him. And just as he adjusted his grip, prepared for whatever shimmer or shadow would leap from hiding, he muttered to himself, "If I survive this, I'm writing a memoir," tentatively titled, "How to Get Killed Gracefully by an Alien Princess Who Finds Your Coffee Habits Amusing." Her ears twitched, and for a fraction of a second he thought she might be laughing at him, or she might be plotting the next test of his reflexes. Either way, he was exactly where he needed to be, caught between danger, humor, and a queen whose long ears promised she saw far more than anyone had a right to know. The embassy's corridors twisted like the innards of a starship, with an overactive sense of drama, and Captain Elias Arden found himself wishing he had memorized more than just the emergency escape routes. Queen Lysara glided beside him, ears angled like delicate radar arrays, scanning the air for the faintest irregularity. She moved with a grace that suggested neither gravity nor urgency mattered to her, which was infuriating, because Elias did not have the luxury of ignoring either. "Do you ever run?" he asked, keeping his tone light even though his fingers brushed the holster at his side. "I mean, figuratively or literally. You glide like you're auditioning for a zero-G ballet." Lysara's ears twitched and a faint smile curved her lips. "Running is inefficient. One expends energy poorly. Glide, pivot, sense vibrations. These accomplish more." And besides, she added, a twinkle in her violet eyes, you seem better suited for chaotic sprints. They suit your human humor. Elias snorted. Chaotic sprints, that is officially my new job title. Right under Captain of Improvised Disaster Management. He gestured vaguely toward the corridor, which shifted subtly as they passed, the walls bending in what looked like a barely perceptible wave. And this place doesn't help. I swear it has mood swings. That, Lysara said, glancing at him with a delicate tilt of her head, is what humans call architectural design, or perhaps rebellion against architectural design. I am still deciding. Her ears flicked toward the ceiling, then back to him, and he noticed the faint shimmer above them, something moving just beyond normal visual range. Shimmer, he muttered. Translation, probable assassin. Perhaps a courier delivering unpleasant messages, Lysara suggested dryly. Though I admit assassins are more exciting than interstellar bills, I prefer excitement. They reached the observation deck overlooking the docking bay, the vast expanse of space glittering with distant stars and the occasional streak of faster-than-light traffic. Floating platforms carried embassy staff and security drones, and Elia's sharp eyes caught a shadow slipping between the patrols. There, he said, pointing, see that, definitely not a maintenance droid. Lysara's long ears vibrated faintly, a signal he was beginning to interpret as either interest or approval. Ah, clever human observation, she said. You may yet survive the day. Elias grinned, though his heartbeat quickened. I survived by accident and sarcasm, mostly sarcasm. The day moved like molasses in microgravity, slow and sticky, punctuated by occasional flashes of danger. Elias learned quickly that palace intrigue in the Xylaran court was far more labyrinthine than any human battlefield. Security protocols were invisible, shifting, and occasionally seemed to contradict themselves, which made him mutter colorful descriptions of them to anyone, or anything, that would listen. Lysara listened, and occasionally commented on his imagination. Your language is vivid, Captain. Do you often exaggerate danger to amuse yourself? Exaggeration, he said, is a survival tactic. If I seem calm, the universe punishes me for arrogance. He leaned against a railing, watching a patrol drone pivot around the docking bay, wings humming like mechanical hummingbirds. Also, it keeps assassins guessing. Or maybe it confuses my allies. Either way, it's working beautifully. Lysara laughed, and Elias noticed her ears flicking in a pattern that seemed almost musical. He realized that he was beginning to understand them, not fully but enough to catch the cues. When she tilted them forward, she was curious, backward amused, vibrating slightly, irritated or alert. The realization made him feel like he had decoded a minor star map of emotion. Their banter was interrupted when a small explosion rocked the upper levels of the embassy, sending floating flower pods spinning in midair. Elias bolted forward, firing a warning shot into the void, and Lysara followed with a calm sweep of her hand, sending a pulse of bioenergy that stabilized the floating flora. One pod twirled past him and he caught it reflexively. Zero-gravity gardening is hazardous, he muttered. It is also decorative, Lysara said, ignoring his grumbling, and provides useful distractions for potential threats. Observe and learn, Captain. She swept her hand again, nudging the pod gently. It floated back into place like a choreographed dancer, and Elias could only shake his head in disbelief. I'll take your word for it, he said, though I prefer my flowers not trying to assassinate me in midair. The incident was minor, but it confirmed Elia's suspicion. Someone was testing the palace defenses, probing for weaknesses. He voiced this cautiously. Looks like our shadow is curious. Might be time to upgrade from witty remarks to actual vigilance. Lysara's ears twitched in approval. Excellent, you may prove useful yet. I will show you the more sensitive areas of the palace. Perhaps seeing the infrastructure will help you understand why your humor is necessary, or at least entertaining. They moved through a corridor that spiraled downward in a corkscrew of clear panels. overlooking laboratories where scientists in translucent suits manipulated anti-gravity energy fields and quantum sensors. Elias ducked as a hovering drone zipped past, emitting a soft, apologetic beep. "Tell me one thing," he said, glancing at Lysara. "Do all your labs come with moving hazards, or is today special?" "Hazards are relative," she replied, ears flicking like a slow metronome. "They are only dangerous if one is inattentive. I observe, guide, and occasionally amuse myself at the expense of human clumsiness. Consider it enrichment training." Elias muttered under his breath. "Enrichment training. Yeah, that explains half the bruises on my ribs." He stepped carefully around a swirling field of nanoprobes, watching as they performed their delicate ballet. "I suppose every palace has its quirks. This just happens to have lethal ones disguised as flowers and floating sparkly things." Lysara glanced at him, a hint of amusement in her violet eyes. "You adapt quickly, Captain. Or perhaps your sarcasm is merely survival instinct in disguise. Either way, it serves you well." Hours passed in a strange combination of humor, tension, and endless observation. Elias found himself growing accustomed to the palace's peculiarities, to Lysara's teasing, and to the subtle way her ears signaled every shift in mood, every flicker of attention. When they paused in a chamber lined with delicate crystalline walls that refracted the light from the docking bay into 1,000 tiny spectrums, he allowed himself a small grin. "You know," he said, "for a queen whose court specializes in intrigue, you're surprisingly entertaining." She smiled, the sound of it filling the chamber, ears twitching in delight. "I take my amusement where I can find it, Captain. And today, you provide a remarkable source of both humor and perspective. Though you may not survive all my lessons, I suspect you will make them memorable." The shadow lurking in the docking bay moved again, a shimmer that suggested both impatience and skill. Elias caught it, raised a hand, and felt the familiar surge of readiness that had kept him alive through countless missions. "Well," he muttered, "looks like our mysterious friend has decided to make introductions. Shall we?" Lysara inclined her head, ears flicking forward. "Shall we indeed? And try to keep your humor sharp, it may save your life yet." As they prepared to confront the invisible threat, Elias realized something profound and somewhat terrifying. He trusted this queen with long ears, with the strange ability to sense danger and amuse herself at his expense, more than he trusted half the humans he'd ever served with. Somewhere between the floating flowers, quantum labs, and whispered laughter, a bond had begun to form, one forged from humor, necessity, and the quiet recognition that two very different species might survive together, if only they could laugh while doing so. And as the first sparks of danger brushed against them, he muttered under his breath, "If surviving this is part of the enrichment program, I may have to start charging tuition." The shimmering shadow moved faster than Elias' eyes could track, twisting through the corridors like liquid light. The anti-gravity panels beneath them hummed, and he vaulted over a low barrier, feeling the familiar thrill of chaos tighten his chest and sharpen his focus. Lysara's long ears flicked in perfect rhythm with the motion of the shadow, detecting vibrations in the walls, the hum of energy conduits, the almost imperceptible pulse of an intruder's presence. "Captain," she said calmly, "you see how subtle movements can betray an intruder's intent. You are almost impressive when you are serious." Elias muttered under his breath, "Almost impressive, I'll take it." He lunged through a corridor that twisted on itself, using the shifting walls to gain leverage, while the shadow darted ahead, laughing with a hollow, eerie resonance. Somewhere above them, the fluorescent strips of the embassy's lighting flared, casting fractured reflections across Lysara's violet eyes, making them shimmer like distant nebulae. "This is what I call an interactive tour," he said. "You should advertise it, Assassin Dodging 101, with your favorite human soldier." Lysara's ears twitched sharply. "You jest, but humor is a powerful tool. Even in danger, laughter can destabilize one's opponent. Though in your case, Captain, It is mostly entertaining for me. The shadow skidded around a corner and paused briefly near a floating laboratory filled with quantum sensors and levitating tools. Elias caught sight of its humanoid shape, a shapeshifter capable of mimicking almost any form, and realized it had been tracking them, testing the palace's defenses. He raised his weapon, aiming at the spot where the shimmer condensed into a humanoid outline. "Okay," he muttered. "Let's see how predictable assassins are when confronted with sarcasm and lead." Lysara moved beside him, one hand extended, fingertips glowing faintly with bioenergy. "Do not underestimate it," she warned, ears vibrating in caution. "This one can adapt, strike together." He smiled, half grim, half amused. "Together it is, then. You stabilize, I improvisationally panic." The shadow lunged, and Elias fired, the energy rounds arcing in midair with a hum. The figure twisted into another shape, evading the shot, and he cursed softly. Lysara pulsed energy in response, creating a ripple that destabilized the floor beneath the shapeshifter. It stumbled, and Elias seized the opportunity, rolling and firing a second shot that grazed its shoulder. The assassin recovered, lunging toward Lysara. Elias dove, catching her by the arm midair, and they tumbled into a chamber of crystalline walls. The surfaces refracted their images in infinite multiplicity, creating the illusion that they were surrounded by dozens of enemies. Lysara's ears flattened as she concentrated, releasing a precise pulse of energy that froze the shapeshifter in place, immobilizing it without permanent harm. Breathing heavily, Elias scrambled to his feet, brushing dust from his uniform. "Well," he said, "I suppose we now know why anti-gravity halls are considered prime real estate for assassination attempts. Also, don't ask me how I pulled that off. It involved hope, luck, and probably a little chaos." Lysara's violet eyes glimmered with amusement, and her ears flicked rhythmically. "You performed admirably, Captain. Not perfectly, but your combination of wit, improvisation, and human stubbornness is effective. Perhaps you understand more than you realize. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. You have learned this well today." Elias swallowed, realizing for the first time that he had not only protected a queen, but had navigated a web of interstellar politics, bioenergy manipulation, and lethal intrigue without losing his wit or his life. "So basically," he said, still catching his breath, "I'm a hero now, or at least a competent hazard manager." "You are both," Lysara replied. "And more, today you have built trust between two worlds. That is no small feat, Captain Arden. Your species, peculiar qualities, your humor, your persistence, may prove essential in bridging the gap between humans and Xylarans." Elias gave a crooked grin, thinking about the countless sarcastic remarks he had uttered over the past few hours, the chaotic sprints through corridors, and the floating plants that almost impaled him. Trust between species. Sounds ambitious, and I thought surviving one palace tour was enough heroism for a lifetime. Lysara laughed, the sound echoing through the crystalline chamber, and her ears vibrated in amusement. "You underestimate yourself, Captain. There is more to this day than survival. You have grown. You have seen beyond your own species, and perhaps beyond your own limitations." The embassy slowly returned to calm. Security drones hovered lazily, repairing minor damage, and the floating flowers resumed their gentle dance in midair. Elias took a deep breath, letting the tension slip from his shoulders, and noticed that Lysara's expression had softened, her violet eyes reflecting gratitude and something else, trust. They walked together to the observation deck, looking out over the glittering expanse of space. Elias rested his hands on the railing, the hum of distant engines and the soft light of nebulae filling the silence. "You know," he said, "I never thought I'd be giving tactical advice to an alien queen who could detect vibrations with her ears and stabilize floating objects with a gesture. And yet, here we are." Lysara's ears twitched in amusement. "You have a unique perspective, Captain Arden. Your humor, your courage, your persistence. They are human, yes, but also extraordinary. And they have saved lives today, not only mine but many others. That is worth recognition and perhaps even friendship. Elia smiled, the weight of the day finally settling into satisfaction. Friendship. That's a dangerous word in your court, isn't it? Perhaps, she replied lightly, but worth the risk, especially with someone who can navigate danger while cracking jokes about chaos and coffee. A brief silence followed, filled only by the soft hum of the embassy and the distant stars. Elias realized he had changed. He was no longer just a soldier assigned to guard duty. He had become a participant in interstellar diplomacy, a bridge between two worlds, and someone capable of blending humor and courage in equal measure. He felt pride, not arrogance, and a quiet understanding that sometimes survival demanded more than skill. It demanded